The cafe was quiet that evening, the kind of quiet that made every small sound seem louder. The clink of cups, the soft murmur of a few late customers, and the gentle hum of the refrigerator filled the room. She moved carefully between tables, balancing a tray of coffee and desserts, her mind half on her work and half on the piano sitting in the corner. It wasn't a grand piano, just a small upright with a few scratches, but it had become her companion over the years. She had been working here for months, serving drinks and meals to people who rarely noticed her, and yet every night she found a moment to sit at the piano. She didn't play for anyone, not really, just for herself. The notes were her escape, her way of letting the day's stress fall away. Her fingers moved over the keys with ease, recalling songs she had learned as a child, melodies that brought her comfort. The cafe had become her little world, a place where she could breathe and feel something beyond the everyday routine. That evening, the cafe was busier than usual. A group of well-dressed people had come in, laughing softly and talking in low tones that somehow sounded important. They reserved a corner table and ordered carefully, as if each choice was part of a plan. She moved among the tables, pouring drinks, wiping crumbs, and trying not to draw attention. But she felt their eyes on her more than once, glancing up as she passed, and it made her stomach tighten. She had played piano in front of strangers before, but something about this group felt different. They had a presence that made her feel small, even though she had no reason to be nervous. When the shift slowed down a little, one of the guests approached her. She smiled politely, expecting a question about the menu or a request for a refill. Instead, the man said, "We hear you play piano. Could you play a simple tune for us? Just something light, something easy." She blinked, taken aback. She had played the piano every day, but never for people like this. The request seemed casual, but the weight of it made her heart race. She nodded, her fingers brushing against the smooth wood of the piano, feeling both excitement and fear. As she walked toward the piano, she tried to calm herself. This was just a simple tune, she reminded herself, nothing more. Yet when she sat down and opened the music, the notes seemed to stare back at her. She had played them countless times, but now they felt different. She took a deep breath and let her fingers fall on the keys. The first notes were tentative, unsure, but familiar. She could hear the melody in her mind, soft and sweet, and she focused on each key, each movement of her hands. The guests were silent, listening intently, and she could feel their attention. Every eye seemed fixed on her, every small movement magnified. The pressure was there, but it didn't crush her. Instead, it awakened something inside her. She remembered the hours she had spent practicing alone, the late nights when the house was empty and the piano was her only company. She remembered the joy of discovering a new song, the thrill of learning a difficult piece and finally playing it right. That memory gave her strength. Her fingers began to move more confidently, the notes flowing smoothly. She could feel the rhythm of the tune as if it were part of her heartbeat. The small piano in the corner of the cafe seemed to come alive, responding to her touch. She glanced at the faces around her, noting the subtle nods, the smiles that appeared as the music reached them. She didn't look for approval, but she felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that her playing touched them in some way. As the tune continued, she allowed herself to be fully present in the moment. She noticed the way the light fell across the keys, the way the shadows moved on the walls. She felt the warmth of the room, the quiet hum of life around her, and she let it all enter the music. The notes were no longer just notes. They were expressions of everything she had felt in the past, everything she had hoped for in the future. The cafe faded away. There were no tables, no customers, no quiet hum of the refrigerator. There was only her and the piano, the music flowing from her fingers and filling the room. She lost herself in the melody, letting it carry her beyond the walls of the cafe, beyond the expectations of anyone else. She played with her heart, with her soul, and it made every note shine. The guests were captivated. Some leaned forward slightly, drawn into the music. Others closed their eyes, letting the sound wash over them. She noticed a man taking notes quietly, his expression serious but intrigued. It was clear that they weren't just listening, They were experiencing the music with her. That realization brought a mix of pride and nervousness. She didn't want to disappoint them, but she also didn't want to stop herself. When the simple tune came to an end, there was a pause. No one spoke at first. The silence felt heavy, but in a good way, as if the room itself was acknowledging what had just happened. Then, slowly, a few gentle claps began, followed by more. She sat at the piano, her hands hovering over the keys, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She had played for herself, yes, but now she understood that her music had meaning beyond her own enjoyment, could touch others, move them, and maybe even change something in their lives. After the applause, the guests approached her, thanking her and complimenting her talent. She felt shy, unsure of how to respond, but their smiles were genuine, encouraging. One of them mentioned that her playing was more than just skill. It was emotion, passion, and story. She didn't know what to say, only that she felt a strange mixture of joy and disbelief. She had always loved playing piano, but she had never imagined that it could have this effect on others. That night, as she cleaned up the cafe and closed the doors, she couldn't stop thinking about the performance. The memory of the attentive faces, the quiet awe, and the gentle applause stayed with her. She realized that a simple request to play a tune had become something much bigger. A moment where her music mattered, where her talent shone, even if just for a little while. She sat at the piano once more before leaving, letting her fingers trace the keys softly. The notes were familiar, comforting, and they reminded her why she had started playing in the first place. It wasn't about recognition or applause, though that was nice. It was about expression, about finding a voice through music. That evening had shown her that voice could reach beyond herself, touching hearts in ways she hadn't imagined. As she walked home under the quiet city lights, she felt a sense of possibility. The world seemed bigger, brighter, and filled with potential. A simple piano tune had been the beginning of something she couldn't yet name, but she knew it was important. For the first time in a long while, she felt that maybe her music could take her further than she had ever dared to dream. The nervousness that had accompanied her earlier was replaced by a quiet determination. She had discovered a new part of herself, a part that was brave, creative, and ready to embrace whatever came next. That night, the small cafe and the simple piano became more than just a place to pass the time. They became the starting point of a journey she had never expected. A journey that began with a simple tune and the courage to play it fully, without holding back. And as she drifted to sleep, the melody still playing in her mind, she knew this was only the beginning. The next day, she arrived at the cafe feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The memory of last night's performance lingered in her mind like a song she couldn't stop humming. The applause, the faces of the guests, the feeling of being seen in a way she had never experienced before. It all came rushing back. She wasn't sure what to expect today. The cafe was usually quiet in the morning, with just a few regulars reading newspapers or drinking coffee in peace. Yet even the familiar routine felt different after what had happened. She moved through her tasks with care, wiping tables, arranging chairs, and refilling drinks, but her mind kept wandering to the piano in the corner. She longed to sit down and play again, to feel her fingers glide over the keys, and hear the notes spill out like a secret she could only share through music. But there was a shadow of worry too. What if last night had been a fluke? What if she couldn't recreate that feeling again? The thought made her stomach tighten, but she pushed it aside and focused on her work. By mid-morning, a few customers trickled in. They greeted her politely, some noticing the small change in her demeanor. She smiled at them, but her thoughts were elsewhere, circling the piano. She peeked at the corner where it stood, polished and ready, and felt a pull she couldn't ignore. She wanted to play, to immerse herself in the music and see where it would take her. The idea of performing again, even in a small, quiet way, was both thrilling and terrifying. As the day went on, a manager approached her with a request. "The guests from last night would like to return this evening," he said. "They want to hear more of your music." She froze for a moment, feeling a surge of pressure and excitement. Her heart began to race. This was not just a casual request. It was a chance to show that her talent was real, that last night's moment wasn't just luck. She nodded, trying to calm herself, and agreed. There was no turning back now. All afternoon, she practiced quietly in the cafe when there were no customers, her fingers tracing the familiar keys, experimenting with small variations in the melodies. She remembered the way the audience had reacted, the way the music had seemed to flow effortlessly when she let herself feel it. Yet the thought of an expectant crowd tonight made her nervous. She focused on her breathing, telling herself to stay calm, to trust herself and her hands. Each note became a reminder that she knew this music, that it was a part of her. As evening approached, the cafe filled with a more formal crowd. The same well-dressed guests arrived, their faces curious and attentive. She greeted them with a smile, her heart pounding, and led them to the corner where the piano waited. The room felt charged with anticipation. She took a deep breath and sat down, her fingers hovering over the keys. The first notes came out softly, as if testing the waters. She could feel every eye in the room on her, every tiny movement magnified, and it made her nervous, yet alive. The tune began simple, just like last night. She played carefully at first, letting the melody settle in the room. But soon, as the music flowed, she felt her confidence returning. She remembered why she loved playing piano, the way it let her express what words could not. The small notes she had learned as a child carried emotion and meaning, and she allowed them to fill the space around her. Each chord, each pause, became a conversation with the audience. The guests responded subtly at first, leaning in slightly, their eyes focused on her hands. She noticed the quiet smile of one man, the gentle nod of another. The music seemed to draw them in, pulling their attention away from the world and into the room where she and the piano created something entirely new. She felt the pressure but also the freedom that came from trusting her instincts. Her fingers moved with a life of their own, finding patterns and expressions she had never explored before. As she continued, she allowed herself to explore beyond the simple tune. She added small embellishments, subtle changes in rhythm, and soft variations that brought the music alive. The room shifted with her playing, the atmosphere changing from casual curiosity to genuine engagement. She realized that this was more than just entertainment. It was a connection. The music became a bridge between her inner world and the people around her, a language that needed no words. There were moments when she faltered, a missed note or an uncertain chord, but she quickly recovered, letting the music guide her. The nervousness that had started the evening faded, replaced by a focus so intense that she felt she was floating. Every note mattered, every sound a thread in a larger tapestry. The simple tune became a canvas, and she painted it with emotion, with energy, with herself. The guests leaned in closer, captivated by the authenticity of her playing. She glanced briefly at the faces around her and saw surprise, admiration, and wonder. Some closed their eyes, lost in the music. Others whispered quietly to each other, clearly moved by what they heard. It was a powerful feeling to see that the music she loved so dearly could touch others so deeply. Her confidence grew with each note, and she realized that she was not performing for approval, but sharing something intimate, a part of herself that could resonate with anyone willing to listen. The tune gradually evolved, flowing into a richer, fuller version that carried hints of improvisation. She explored dynamics, softening the notes in one moment, letting them ring boldly in the next. The room seemed to breathe with her, each pause filled with anticipation. She could feel the energy of the guests responding, their attention sharpening, their engagement palpable. It was a delicate balance of control and surrender, and she felt herself mastering it, one note at a time. Her mind wandered to the first time she had truly felt connected to the piano. It had been years ago in a small room at home, with no audience except herself. The music had given her solace, had been a friend when she felt alone. Now, in the presence of these attentive strangers, she understood that the piano could be a bridge, a messenger of emotions too deep for speech. The weight of that understanding made her playing more deliberate, more heartfelt, as if every key carried a story she wanted to tell. As the final section of the tune approached, she slowed slightly, savoring the sound and the reaction of the audience. She noticed the subtle movements, the soft exhale, the slight leaning forward as if the guests were trying to absorb every moment. She felt a quiet pride, a deep satisfaction, knowing that she had created an experience that mattered. The music was no longer just notes on a page. It was living, breathing, and sharing a part of her soul. When the last note lingered and faded, there was a brief silence. It felt charged with meaning, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Then applause began, soft at first, and then growing louder, filling the cafe with warmth and appreciation. She sat at the piano, catching her breath, feeling a mixture of relief and exhilaration. The nervousness of earlier had melted away, replaced by a newfound confidence. She realized she was capable of more than she had imagined, that her talent could carry her beyond a small cafe corner into moments of genuine connection. After the performance, the guests approached her again, praising her ability to transform a simple tune into something memorable. Their words were kind, but it was their expressions, the genuine admiration in their eyes, that left the strongest impression. She felt shy, almost overwhelmed, yet grateful. She had come to play a simple tune, and instead, she had created a moment that would stay with both her and the audience. The recognition was not just about skill. It was about heart, about sharing a part of herself that she had held close for so long. That night, as she cleaned up the cafe and prepared to leave, she felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The music had taught her something important, that pressure could bring out strength, that nervousness could be a guide rather than a barrier, and that sharing one's true self could create connections more powerful than any applause. She had faced expectations, embraced her fear, and transformed a simple request into an experience that mattered. It was a lesson she would carry forward, knowing that the path ahead, while uncertain, was full of potential and possibility. She sat at the piano, the familiar keys beneath her fingers, feeling the hum of the cafe around her. The evening crowd had gathered, a mixture of regulars and the well-dressed guests from before. Their eyes followed her movements, and the room felt alive with expectation. She knew that tonight was different. The simple tune she had been asked to play no longer felt enough. She wanted to take the music beyond its notes, to let it breathe and transform into something larger, something that carried emotion and soul. She began with the familiar melody, letting the first notes fall softly into the room. The audience leaned in, as if waiting for her next move, but she allowed herself a moment of calm. Her fingers felt natural on the keys, her heart syncing with the rhythm of the tune. She remembered the practice sessions, the countless hours spent alone exploring the piano, and she felt a quiet confidence. The music was no longer just a simple tune. It was an opportunity to speak without words, to communicate feelings too deep to express otherwise. As the melody continued, she began to add subtle variations, gentle embellishments that made the tune her own. She experimented with timing, letting certain notes linger while others moved quickly, creating tension and release. The audience responded, almost imperceptibly at first, leaning forward slightly or closing their eyes, drawn into the flow of sound. She could feel the energy in the room shift, the quiet curiosity turning into engagement, the simple tune evolving into something alive. With each passing measure, she allowed herself to take greater risks. She added small flourishes, trills, and chords that were not part of the original composition. The music began to tell a story, one of hope, struggle, and determination. Her fingers moved with confidence, guided by intuition rather than the written notes. She could sense the surprise and admiration in the audience, the way they responded to the unexpected twists in the melody. It was a delicate dance, balancing familiarity with innovation, and she felt exhilarated. There were moments when she almost faltered, a note sliding past her fingers or a chord sounding slightly off. But she embraced the imperfections, weaving them into the music. Each mistake became an opportunity to create something new, to adapt and respond in the moment. The audience seemed to sense this, appreciating the authenticity and spontaneity of her performance. She realized that perfection was not the goal, the connection, the emotion, the shared experience was what mattered most. As she continued to improvise, the tune began to take on a life of its own. The simple melody transformed into a rich, dynamic piece, full of emotion and nuance. She explored contrasts, moving from soft, delicate passages to bold, dramatic chords. The cafe seemed to fade away, the walls and tables disappearing, leaving only her, the piano, and the music. She lost herself in the flow, her fingers flying across the keys with both precision and freedom. The audience was captivated. Some whispered softly to each other. Others simply sat in silence, letting the music wash over them. She noticed a few tears glistening in the eyes of certain listeners, and it filled her with a deep sense of purpose. The piano had become a bridge between her world and theirs, a language that needed no words. She could feel the impact of every note, the way it resonated not just in the room but in the hearts of those listening. As the piece reached its middle section, she allowed herself to be fully expressive. She leaned into the keys, letting her body sway slightly with the rhythm. She explored emotional peaks and valleys, from quiet introspection to powerful crescendos. The music became a reflection of her inner world, the joys and struggles, the dreams and fears she had carried for so long. She realized that this was more than performance. It was a conversation with the universe, an offering of herself through sound. The improvisation drew the audience in deeper. She could sense their anticipation, their curiosity about what would come next. Every pause was filled with tension, every chord released with satisfaction. She played not just with her hands but with her whole being, allowing emotion to guide her choices. The room seemed to respond, a subtle shift in energy as the audience moved with the music, feeling each note as if it were theirs. She remembered the first time she had played for an audience, the nervousness, the uncertainty. Tonight was different. Tonight she was in control yet free. She had learned to trust herself, to trust the music, and to let the performance evolve naturally. It was a delicate balance, requiring focus and courage, and she felt alive in a way she had never experienced before. Midway through the performance, she introduced a series of unexpected harmonies, weaving together dissonance and resolution in a way that surprised even her. The audience reacted instinctively, leaning closer, their eyes widening as they followed the transformation of the melody. It was a risk stepping beyond the familiar, but it paid off. She could feel the room vibrating with the shared emotion, the music connecting everyone present in a way that words could never achieve. As the tune moved toward its climax, she played with intensity, pouring all her energy and feeling into the keys. The notes soared and fell, creating waves of sound that filled the room. Her body was in motion, her fingers flying, yet every note was deliberate, every chord meaningful. She felt a sense of unity with the piano, as if it were an extension of herself, a voice through which she could communicate without limits. The audience was completely engaged. Some closed their eyes, some whispered softly, and others simply sat in awe. She could see the connection forming, the way the music had moved beyond entertainment into something transformative. She realized that this moment was rare, precious, and fleeting, and she embraced it fully. The music became a dialogue, a shared experience that transcended the ordinary, leaving everyone in the room touched and changed. She allowed the music to gently wind down, softening the notes, slowing the tempo, and letting the melody breathe. The room fell into a hushed silence, the kind of quiet that comes when people are holding their breath, not wanting to break the spell. She felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration, her heart racing, her fingers tingling from the intensity of the performance. The music had taken her on a journey, and now it was coming to a close. The final notes lingered, delicate and resonant, fading slowly into the air. The silence that followed was powerful, charged with emotion and anticipation. Then, gradually, applause began to ripple through the cafe, soft at first, then growing louder, filling the space with warmth and appreciation. She sat at the piano, breathing heavily, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment that went beyond words. The guests approached her afterward, expressing their admiration and awe. They spoke of the emotions they had felt, the way the music had captured their attention and hearts. She felt shy, overwhelmed by the praise, yet grateful. She had taken a simple tune and transformed it, creating an experience that was more than performance. It was connection, emotion, and expression. She realized that music had power, and she had discovered that power within herself. As she left the cafe that night, the city lights shining around her, she felt a new sense of possibility. The experience had opened doors within her, revealing potential she had never fully understood. She knew that the journey was just beginning, that there were more melodies to explore, more audiences to touch, more moments of triumph waiting ahead. The piano had given her a voice, and she was ready to use it, confident that her music could create impact, inspire, and move people in ways she had only just begun to discover. She took a deep breath and sat at the piano once more, feeling the weight of the room's attention. The guests had gathered again, some returning from previous evenings, their faces expectant and eager. She knew that tonight was not just another performance. It was the moment where everything she had practiced, every note she had played in quiet solitude, would be tested and transformed. The simple tune they had requested was no longer just a melody. It was the foundation of a story she was about to tell with her hands and her heart. Her fingers hovered above the keys, trembling slightly, but the nervousness was accompanied by excitement. She began softly, allowing the familiar notes to settle into the space. The audience leaned in instinctively, sensing that something was about to unfold. The melody, though simple at first, carried with it the promise of something greater. She let herself feel the music fully, letting it guide her through the first few measures. Each note seemed to resonate more deeply than before, carrying her emotions directly to the listeners. As she continued, she began to explore variations, expanding the simple tune into a richer, more expressive performance. She added gentle flourishes, small changes in rhythm, and subtle harmonies that breathed new life into the melody. The audience responded immediately. They leaned forward, their eyes tracking her movements, their attention fully captured. Some closed their eyes, allowing the music to wash over them, while others whispered softly to each other, clearly moved by the depth and emotion of her playing. She allowed herself to take risks, to improvise in ways that felt natural and inspired. The music began to tell a story, one of hope, courage, and determination. Her fingers danced across the keys with a fluidity and confidence that came from years of practice and devotion. Every note carried weight, every chord conveyed feeling. She could sense the audience's growing admiration and connection, and it fueled her further. She was no longer playing for approval. She was sharing a piece of herself, a story without words. Midway through the performance, she introduced more dynamic contrasts, moving from soft, delicate passages to bold, dramatic chords. The tension and release of the music created a powerful emotional journey for everyone in the room. She felt a deep sense of unity with the piano, as if it were an extension of her own emotions. The audience was completely engaged, their reactions subtle but telling. She could see the surprise, the delight, and even the tears forming in their eyes. Her music had transcended a simple performance. It had become an experience that touched hearts. She played with total immersion, her entire body involved in the music. She leaned into the keys, swayed with the rhythm, and allowed herself to be fully expressive. The room seemed to fade away, leaving only the sound, the emotion, and the connection between her and the listeners. Each chord, each pause, each flourish was intentional, carrying meaning beyond the notes on the page. She realized that this was the true power of music, the ability to communicate, to move, and to create shared experiences without a single word spoken. As the piece approached its climax, she felt a surge of energy and confidence. Her fingers moved faster, more deliberately, creating waves of sound that filled the cafe with intensity and passion. The audience was completely absorbed, leaning in, their attention riveted on the transformation unfolding before them. The simple tune had evolved into a full, expressive performance that showcased not only her technical skill, but also her emotional depth. The music carried joy, sorrow, hope, and triumph, all intertwined in a seamless flow. She noticed the subtle reactions in the audience. A hand gently touching a cheek, eyes widening in awe, soft gasps of amazement. The connection was palpable, almost tangible. It was in these moments that she understood the true impact of her performance. She was not merely entertaining. She was creating a shared emotional journey, a moment of beauty and power that would linger in the hearts of those who experienced it. She felt a deep satisfaction, a sense of accomplishment that went beyond applause or recognition. As the music reached its peak, she allowed herself to fully express the culmination of the story she had been telling. The chords rang out boldly, the melody soaring, and every note carried a piece of her soul. She felt exhilaration, freedom, and joy, knowing that she had transformed a simple request into a moment of true artistry. The audience was captivated, completely immersed in the music, as if time had slowed and the world outside the cafe had vanished. When the final notes finally faded, there was a brief, charged silence. The room seemed to hold its breath, savoring the end of the journey. Then, slowly, applause began to ripple through the space, soft at first, then swelling into a wave of appreciation. Some guests rose to their feet, clapping and cheering, their expressions filled with wonder and admiration. She sat at the piano, breathing heavily, feeling a mixture of relief, pride, and deep emotional fulfillment. The performance had been everything she had hoped for and more. The guests approached her afterward, expressing their awe and gratitude. They spoke of how the music had touched them, how it had moved them in ways they had not expected. Some commented on the emotional depth, others on the technical brilliance, but all seemed genuinely affected. She felt shy, humbled, yet profoundly grateful. She had taken a simple piano tune and transformed it into a moment of triumph, a performance that left a lasting impression on everyone present. After the guests left, she remained at the piano for a while, letting her fingers trace the keys softly. She reflected on the journey of the evening, on how nervousness and pressure had given way to confidence and expression. The piano had become a vehicle for her emotions, a way to communicate her innermost feelings, and a bridge between her world and that of the listeners. She realized that true artistry was not just about skill, but about authenticity, courage, and the willingness to share oneself fully. That night, as she walked home under the quiet city lights, she felt a sense of transformation within herself. The performance had shown her that her music had the power to move others, to create moments of connection, and to inspire. She felt a new sense of purpose, a quiet determination to continue exploring her talent and sharing it with the world. The experience had changed her, opening doors of possibility and giving her the confidence to pursue her passion more fully. She knew that this was not the end, but a beginning. The moment of triumph she had created at the piano was a testament to her dedication, her courage, and her ability to embrace the unexpected. It was proof that even a simple tune, when played with heart and soul, could become something extraordinary. As she drifted to sleep that night, the melody still playing in her mind, she felt a deep sense of peace and excitement. She had discovered the power within herself to transform a single moment into an unforgettable experience, and she knew that many more such moments awaited her in the future. The morning after her unforgettable performance, she woke up with a strange mix of excitement and calm. The memory of the previous night's applause, the captivated faces of the audience, and the deep satisfaction she had felt while playing filled her mind. It was different from any feeling she had experienced before. The performance had not just been about music. It had been about sharing a piece of herself, and now the world seemed slightly larger, filled with possibilities she had never imagined. She arrived at the cafe for her morning shift, her steps lighter than usual. The usual tasks, cleaning tables, refilling cups, serving breakfast, felt almost ordinary compared to what she had just achieved. Yet she noticed the quiet respect in the glances of some of the regular customers, the way they lingered for a moment when she passed. It was as if they sensed the change in her, though she hadn't spoken a word. The piano in the corner waited patiently, its keys polished and ready, like a friend waiting to hear from her again. She longed to sit down and play, to feel the music flow through her fingers and fill the room once more. As the day progressed, her manager approached her with surprising news. Several of the guests from last night had left their contact information, asking if she would be willing to play at other events, private gatherings, and even small concerts. She listened in disbelief, her heart racing. Opportunities that had seemed distant or impossible were suddenly within reach. The very music she had played from her heart had created pathways she had never dared to dream of. She felt a mixture of awe and gratitude, realizing that her dedication and courage had opened doors she hadn't even known existed. Throughout the day, she found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point. She remembered the hours spent alone practicing, the quiet nights where the piano was her only companion, and the small victories of learning and improving. Every mistake, every stumble along the way had shaped her skill and resilience. The simple piano in the corner of the cafe had been more than just an instrument. It had been a teacher, a friend, and a guide. Now, it seemed, it was a gateway to a larger world, one where her music could reach more people and leave a lasting impact. By evening, she was preparing for another performance, this time at a private event arranged by one of the guests from the previous night. Her nerves were present, but they were different now, less about fear and more about anticipation. She knew what she was capable of, and she trusted in her abilities. As she sat at the piano, the room filled with softly murmuring guests, she felt the familiar thrill of creating music. The first notes were gentle, tentative, and then confident, flowing naturally as the melody began to take shape. The audience watched intently, and she could feel the energy in the room responding to her playing. She allowed herself to explore the music, adding subtle variations, emotional flourishes, and moments of improvisation that made the tune uniquely hers. Each chord, each note, carried emotion and intent, and she felt a deep connection to everyone listening. The room seemed to transform, becoming a space where the music spoke for her, bridging the gap between her heart and the hearts of others. As the performance continued, she noticed the subtle signs of engagement from her audience. Leaning forward, eyes closing, soft smiles, and quiet murmurs of appreciation. It was the same reaction she had seen before, but now she felt more confident, more in control, and more aware of the power of the music she was sharing. She played with intention, with passion, and with the knowledge that she was creating an experience that would stay with the listeners long after the last note had faded. After the performance, several guests approached her with genuine enthusiasm, expressing how deeply the music had moved them. Some asked questions about her background, her training, and her inspirations, while others simply shared heartfelt gratitude for the experience. She felt a warmth and connection that she had never known before. The recognition was not just about skill. It was about authenticity, courage, and the willingness to share her inner world through music. She realized that what she had achieved went far beyond the applause. It was about touching lives and creating moments of meaning. Over the following weeks, invitations to play at private events, local concerts, and small venues continued to arrive. Each opportunity was both exciting and intimidating, but she approached them with the same dedication and heart that had carried her this far. She practiced diligently not to prove herself, but to honor the music and the people who would listen. With each performance, she discovered new layers of expression, new ways to connect, and new possibilities for her future. The simple piano that had once been a companion in quiet moments had become a bridge to a world of opportunities. Despite the growing recognition, she remained grounded. She remembered the long nights of practice, the quiet moments of doubt, and the joy of playing for herself when no one was listening. Those memories kept her humble, reminding her that the heart of music was not fame or success, but connection and expression. She continued to perform at the cafe when she could, finding joy in sharing her music with familiar faces and new listeners alike. The piano became a constant in her life, a source of comfort, inspiration, and fulfillment. She also began to mentor others, sharing her experience and encouraging young musicians to find their own voice. She understood the importance of nurturing talent, of helping others discover the joy and power of music. Her journey had taught her that opportunities often come when courage meets preparation, and she wanted to pass that lesson on. The The simple piano tune that had started it all had grown into something much larger, influencing not only her life but also the lives of those around her. As months passed, she found herself reflecting on the journey with a sense of gratitude and wonder. The path had not been easy, filled with moments of doubt, nervousness, and hard work. But each challenge had shaped her, strengthening her skills, her confidence, and her understanding of herself. She realized that the moment of triumph at the cafe had been more than a performance. It had been a turning point, a confirmation that her passion and dedication could create meaningful impact. One evening, as she played at a small concert for a local audience, she noticed the familiar feeling of connection, the shared emotion, and the quiet joy of bringing music to life. She thought back to that first request to play a simple tune, the nervousness she had felt, and the courage it had taken to embrace the moment fully. She understood now that triumph was not measured by applause or recognition alone, but by the courage to take risks, to be authentic, and to share one's true self. The final note of the evening lingered in the air, and the audience responded with warmth and appreciation. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that the journey had been worth every moment. The simple piano tune that had started it all had led her to a life filled with expression, connection, and possibility. She walked home under the city lights, carrying the melodies in her mind and the lessons in her heart. The music had changed her life, opening doors to experiences and opportunities she had once only dreamed of. And she knew that this was only the beginning of her journey as a musician and as a storyteller through sound.